Hello everyone, and welcome to my General Hospital official channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up.
In the crowded courtroom, the air was thick with tension, a low hum of whispers filling the room as Port Charles residents waited for the trial to begin. The case had gripped the town for weeks. The shooting of Drew Cain had not only shocked everyone but also left a trail of mystery and anger. The judge called for order, and every eye turned toward the front where Drew sat with a bandage still visible under his shirt. Beside him, Sam McCall's hand rested on his, her eyes darting nervously toward the prosecution's table. Today was the day Scout Cain, their young daughter, was set to take the stand. No one had expected she would become a key witness, but her sudden confession had changed everything. The moment she stepped into the courtroom, the room went silent. Even the sound of her small footsteps echoed like thunder against the marble floor. Sam swallowed hard, her heart pounding as Scout took the stand, looking both brave and frightened at the same time. The bailiff swore her in, and Scout glanced toward her parents before turning her attention to the attorney. "Scout," the prosecutor began gently, "can you tell the court what you saw that night?" The little girl hesitated, glancing toward Drew, who nodded reassuringly. "It's okay, sweetheart. Just tell the truth," he said softly, his voice breaking slightly. The courtroom leaned in, waiting. Scout took a deep breath. "I was playing in the hallway," she began, her voice trembling. "Mom and Dad were talking in the living room. I heard a noise outside, like someone bumping into the trash can. I looked out the window, and I saw someone hiding behind the car. I thought maybe it was just a neighbor, but then I saw," her voice cracked, and tears welled up in her eyes. "Take your time, Scout," the attorney urged. "Who did you see?" The pause that followed was long, so long that the judge shifted slightly, his gavel tapping lightly in warning of the murmurs starting up again. I saw Uncle Jason," she finally whispered, her small voice trembling. Gasps erupted across the courtroom. Sam's eyes went wide, and Drew's head snapped toward his daughter, confusion flashing across his face. "What did you just say?" he whispered, unable to contain himself. Scout looked down, ashamed, but then lifted her gaze again. "I saw Uncle Jason," she repeated, her voice a little stronger now. "He had a gun. He looked angry. He was talking to someone else I couldn't see. And then I heard the shot." Sam's hand flew to her mouth, her heart shattering. Jason Morgan, the man she once loved, the man who was supposed to be Drew's brother, their family. The judge demanded order as chaos broke out, reporters scribbling furiously while cameras flashed. "That's impossible," Sam muttered under her breath. "Jason would never," but Scout cut her off, looking straight at her mother. "I saw him, Mom. I swear." Drew's jaw tightened, his eyes clouding with disbelief. He wanted to defend his brother, but the image of that night flashed back, the shadowy figure, the sound of the gun, and the way everything went black before he hit the ground. The defense attorney rose immediately, voice booming through the courtroom. "Objection, Your Honor. The witness is a child. She's under duress, and her statement cannot be taken as factual without corroboration." The judge nodded thoughtfully but allowed the questioning to continue. "Scout, are you sure?" the prosecutor pressed. "You know what it means to tell the truth?" The little girl nodded. "Yes. You said to tell the truth. And I am. I saw him." The silence that followed was so heavy that even the clicking pen stopped. Drew's mind raced. Could Jason really have done it? He and Jason had finally been rebuilding trust after years of betrayal, identity confusion, and resentment. But if what Scout said was true, then everything had just come crashing down. Sam's tears flowed freely as she whispered, "Oh, God, Jason, what did you do?" Later that afternoon, the courtroom took a recess, and everyone filed out, whispering fiercely. Sam cornered Scout in the hallway, kneeling down to her level. "Sweetheart, you need to tell Mommy the truth. Are you sure it was Jason? Maybe it was dark. Maybe you were scared?" But Scout shook her head firmly. "It was him. I saw his face when the light came on from the street. He looked so mad, Mommy. I got scared, so I ran to my room. Sam's throat tightened. She knew Jason, or thought she did. He'd never harmed Drew. But then again, Jason had disappeared months ago without explanation, rumored to be working on something dangerous for Carly and Sonny. Drew approached them slowly, his expression a mix of heartbreak and confusion. Sam, he said quietly, if Scout saw what she says she saw, we can't ignore it. Sam turned to him with fire in her eyes. You really think Jason tried to kill you? Drew sighed heavily. I don't want to believe it. But Scout's never lied before. Maybe he was manipulated. Maybe he didn't mean to shoot me. Inside the courtroom, as the hearing resumed, the prosecutor revealed new evidence, security footage from a nearby store that showed a figure matching Jason's build leaving the scene minutes after the gunshot. The room gasped again. We're not saying he's guilty yet, the prosecutor added, but the witness's statement and this footage give the PCPD probable cause. Sam's heart sank deeper. Carly Corinthos, sitting in the back row, clenched her fists, whispering fiercely to herself, no way. Jason would never do that. But even she looked shaken. The footage was blurry but damning. Drew's mind flashed back to all the nights Jason warned him about enemies, about people who might use their past against them. Could this have been one of those nights gone horribly wrong? As the court adjourned, Port Charles buzzed with speculation. Reporters surrounded Carly, demanding answers. Do you believe Jason Morgan shot Drew Kane? One asked. Carly glared. Jason's not guilty of anything until I see proof. He'd die for Drew, not shoot him. But inside, even Carly felt uneasy. Sonny Corinthos, standing beside her, muttered under his breath, if Scout's telling the truth, there's more to this story than any of us know. Meanwhile, Drew sat alone in the empty courtroom, staring at the witness stand. He remembered the flash of light, the sound of his daughter's scream from the hallway, and the burning pain in his shoulder. Jason's face had flashed through his mind even then, not clear, but familiar enough to haunt him. That night, Sam and Drew met privately at home, emotions raw. What if she's wrong, Drew? Sam pleaded. Jason's like a father to her. Maybe she's mixing up faces, maybe she dreamed it. Drew ran a hand through his hair, exhaustion in his eyes. I want to believe that. But the footage, it's hard to ignore. Sam's tears fell freely. Jason wouldn't do this. I can't lose him like this. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock on the door, Dante Falconeri. We have to talk, he said, his tone heavy. He held a file in his hand. We found something in the evidence bag from the scene, fingerprints. They belong to Jason Morgan. Sam gasped. Drew's heart sank. That's impossible, he said, voice trembling. Jason's supposed to be dead. How are his prints even in the system? Dante sighed. Looks like your brother might not be as gone as we thought. The next day in court, Dante was called to testify. He laid out the facts, detailing how the PCPD had reopened Jason's file after Scout's statement. We've traced communications between someone using Jason's old burner phone and a known arms dealer, Dante said grimly. It's possible Jason was working undercover, but we can't rule out foul play. The judge leaned forward. So you're suggesting someone may have framed him? Dante nodded. Or he's alive and being manipulated. The courtroom erupted again. Sam gripped Drew's arm tightly, whispering, he's alive. He has to be. Drew stared blankly ahead. If Jason was alive and somehow involved, everything about his recovery, his trauma, his family would be turned upside down. Later, in a private moment outside, Scout sat with her mother again. Mommy, she said quietly, did I do something bad? Everyone's mad. Sam hugged her tightly. No, sweetheart. You told the truth. You did the right thing. But as she held her daughter close, Sam's mind raced. What if Scout had seen someone who looked like Jason? The town was full of secrets, and masks were not new to Port Charles. When Carly approached, her voice was sharp. Sam, we need to talk. You can't let them use Scout to destroy Jason. Sam snapped, "You think I want this? She's my daughter." "She saw something, Carly." Carly crossed her arms. "Then maybe she saw who wanted her to think it was Jason." Meanwhile, Drew returned to the hospital for a follow-up checkup and found Elizabeth Weber waiting in the hallway. "You okay?" she asked softly. "Not really," he admitted. "If Jason's alive, everything changes." Liz nodded. "It always does when he comes back." Her words carried a knowing pain. Drew managed a half-smile. "Yeah. It's just never simple, is it?" Liz shook her head. "Not in this town." As the days passed, the investigation deepened. Dante and Anna Devane uncovered surveillance data suggesting someone had been using Jason's name and identity on the black market for months. It led them to question whether Jason himself had been set up by someone within the WSB. Sam clung to the hope that Jason was being framed or forced into something. Drew, however, wrestled with darker thoughts. What if Jason had truly snapped? What if years of loss, guilt, and violence had finally caught up with him? The courtroom climax came a week later when new footage was played, the shooter stepping into the light, half his face visible. The resemblance to Jason was undeniable, but something was off, his stance, his eyes. The prosecutor paused the footage. "We've enhanced the image. The man has a scar on his cheek. Jason Morgan does not." Gasps erupted again. Sam covered her mouth. "Oh my God." Drew's eyes widened. Dante rose. "We've identified this man. He's connected to an old twin experiment that involved both Jason and Drew. His name is Jacob Moore. He's a rogue operative who underwent surgery to look like Jason." The courtroom fell silent as the truth settled in. Scout hadn't been wrong, she'd seen what she thought was her Uncle Jason. But it wasn't him. Drew turned to Sam, relief and sorrow mixing in his eyes. She saw the truth, just not the whole truth. Sam nodded, tears falling freely. "She was trying to protect us." The judge called the court to order as the prosecution dropped its motion to pursue Jason Morgan. Instead, a manhunt was launched for Jacob Moore. When it was all over, Drew knelt beside Scout, taking her small hand in his. "You were so brave, Scout. You helped us find the truth." She smiled weakly. "I just wanted everyone to stop fighting." Sam wrapped her arms around both of them, whispering, "You did that, baby. You saved your dad." Outside, the sunlight broke through the clouds as Dante approached. "We'll find the man who did this," he promised. "And when we do, Jason's name will be cleared." As they left the courthouse, Carly stood on the steps, watching the family reunite. She whispered to Sonny, "He's still out there, isn't he?" Sonny nodded grimly. "Jason always comes back when you least expect him." Somewhere far away, in the shadows of a safe house, a man watched the news feed on an old TV. His hand brushed the scar on his cheek as he smirked. "They think they know everything," he muttered. But behind him, another man stepped into view, Jason Morgan himself, very much alive. "No," Jason said coldly. "Now it's my turn to finish this." And with that, the screen faded to black, leaving every fan of General Hospital breathless for what would come next. The air in the Port Charles courtroom was thick enough to be sliced with a knife, a heavy, palpable mixture of anticipation, anxiety, and the faint, sterile scent of lemon-scented polish struggling to mask the aroma of old wood and older fear. Every creak of the wooden benches, every rustle of a spectator's jacket, every suppressed cough seemed amplified, a percussive accompaniment to the slow, deliberate ticking of the clock mounted high on the wall. The case of the state versus, redacted, the shooting of Drew Kane, had captivated the city, but it had also become a festering wound, a mystery that refused to heal. And now, on a day that had begun like any other, the atmosphere shifted from one of procedural formality to the electric charge of impending revelation. At the center of this maelstrom was a small boy, Scout Kane, who sat fidgeting slightly in the witness stand, his small feet dangling well above the floor. He looked impossibly young and fragile against the imposing backdrop of the judge's bench and the solemnity of the American flag. To his mother, Elizabeth Weber, watching from the front row, his every breath was a painful echo of her own heartbeat. Her hands were clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles were white, a silent prayer on her lips. She had fought against this, had begged and pleaded with the district attorney, with the judge, with anyone who would listen, to spare her son this trauma. To drag a child into the heart of a criminal trial was a brutality she couldn't fathom. Beside her, Drew Kane sat rigid, his own posture a mirror of controlled tension. His physical wounds from the shooting had healed, thanks to time and the diligent care of the hospital staff, but the psychological scars were still raw, sensitive to the touch. His eyes, usually so clear and determined, were clouded with a complex storm of emotions, protectiveness for his son, a burning need for justice, and a deep-seated fear of what the truth might do to the small, brave boy on the stand. The prosecutor, a meticulously dressed woman with a calm but relentless demeanor, approached the witness box with a measured pace. She offered Scout a small, reassuring smile, one she had undoubtedly practiced to appear both kind and authoritative. "Scout," she began, her voice softer than it had been with any other witness, "I know this is a little scary. But I just need you to tell the truth. That's all anyone is asking you to do today. Just tell us what you remember. Can you do that for me?" Scout nodded, a quick, jerky motion, his eyes darting towards his parents before returning to the prosecutor. "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Now, I want you to think back to the day your dad, Drew Kane, was hurt. Do you remember that day?" Another nod, this one slower, more solemn. "Yes. I was supposed to go to the park with him. But he got hurt first." "That's right. And you were there, weren't you? You saw what happened." A hush fell over the courtroom, so profound that the scratching of the court reporter's pen sounded like thunder. Elizabeth's breath hitched. This was the moment she had dreaded. She willed her son to be strong, even as a part of her wished he would clam up, forget, become an uncooperative witness who could be dismissed and shielded from the horror. "I want you to describe for the court what you saw," the prosecutor instructed gently. "Take your time." Scout's brow furrowed in concentration, his young mind traveling back to that traumatic afternoon. "We were by the Metro Court. Me and Dad were talking about getting ice cream after the park. Then there was a loud noise. A bang. Dad, he pushed me. He pushed me behind one of the big planters. He told me to stay down and not look." "But you did look, didn't you, Scout?" the prosecutor prompted, her voice still a soft, insistent murmur. "Just for a second." Scout's lower lip trembled almost imperceptibly. "I was scared. I peeked. I saw a person running away." "Can you describe that person for the court? What did they look like?" The boy's description was, as to be expected from a child, a collection of impressions rather than a precise police sketch. They were wearing a dark jacket with a hood. And they were fast. They ran around the corner. The defense attorney, a man with a perpetually skeptical expression, leaned forward, sensing an opportunity. "Your Honor, the witness's description is vague, as is typical for a child. A dark jacket and a hood? That could describe half of Port Charles on any given day. This is hardly conclusive identification." The judge, a weary-looking man with spectacles perched on the end of his nose, nodded slowly. "I'll allow the line of questioning for now, but the jury will consider the context of the testimony." "Proceed, counselor." The prosecutor gave a curt nod, her focus returning to Scout. She knew the description was weak. But she was building towards something, a cornerstone of her case that she believed was unshakable precisely because of its source. "Scout, that was very helpful." "Thank you," she said, her tone conveying genuine appreciation. She paused, letting the anticipation build again. "Now, I want to ask you about something else. After the person ran away, what did you do?" "I stayed behind the planter. Like Dad said. Then people started coming. There was yelling. An ambulance came." Scout's voice grew small. There was red on Dad's shirt." A sympathetic murmur rippled through the courtroom. Elizabeth closed her eyes for a brief second, the memory a fresh wave of nausea. I understand, the prosecutor said, her voice imbued with a practiced empathy. It's okay. Now, Scout, after that day, the police talked to you, didn't they? Yes. And you worked with a very nice lady, a sketch artist, to try and draw a picture of the person you saw? Yes. She had cool pencils. A faint smile touched the lips of a few jurors. The prosecutor walked over to her table and picked up a large, mounted drawing. She showed it first to the defense, who dismissed it with a wave, and then presented it to Scout. Is this the picture you helped make? Scout looked at the composite sketch, a rough rendering of a face with a hood, indistinct features, and a severe, grim expression. Yes. That's the picture. And does this picture look like the person you saw running from where your dad was shot? Scout studied it, his head tilted. Kind of. It was really fast. The defense attorney made a note on his legal pad. The sketch was, as he had argued in pretrial motions, generic and of little evidentiary value. It was the cornerstone of a weak case, and he was prepared to dismantle it. The prosecutor, however, was not finished. She placed the sketch back on her table. Scout, I have one more question for you. It's the most important one. After you made this picture, you saw someone else, didn't you? Someone here in Port Charles. Elizabeth's head shot up. What was this? This wasn't in the prep. They had agreed not to go down this road. She shot a panicked look at Drew, whose own expression had shifted from tense to alarmed. He leaned over to his lawyer, whispering urgently. Objection, Your Honor. Drew's attorney stood. This is leading the witness into highly speculative and prejudicial territory. The witness is a child. His potential for misidentification is enormous. The prosecutor turned to the judge. Your Honor, the witness has first-hand knowledge. He is not speculating. He is recounting a specific memory, which goes directly to the heart of the case, the identity of the shooter. The judge pondered for a moment that felt like an eternity. I'll allow it. The witness may answer. But, counselor, he said, fixing the prosecutor with a stern gaze, tread carefully. The prosecutor turned back to Scout, her expression one of grave seriousness. Scout, think carefully. You saw someone, later, after the shooting. Someone who made you feel scared. Someone you recognized. Who was that person? The courtroom was a vacuum of sound. Every single person, from the bailiff to the journalists scribbling in the back row, was leaning forward, their collective breath held. Scout's small face crumpled in confusion and the pressure of the moment. He looked like a lost little boy, and Elizabeth's heart broke anew. I don't know if, he stammered. It's okay, Scout, the prosecutor encouraged, her voice a soft but relentless force. Just tell the truth. Who did you see? And then it happened. The moment that would tear through Port Charles like a shockwave. Scout's eyes, wide and filled with a child's unvarnished truth, lifted from the prosecutor and scanned the room. They swept past his mother's pleading face, past his father's tense figure, past the bored-looking court stenographer, and landed on a figure sitting several rows back, a man who had been doing his best to appear detached, an uninterested observer in a drama that did not concern him. The man was Jason Morgan. Scout's finger, small and accusatory, lifted from his lap and pointed directly at him. His voice, though trembling, was clear as a bell in the silent chamber. Him, Scout said, his tone laced with the certainty only a child can possess. I saw him. It was him. He's the one who shot my dad. The dam of silence broke. A collective, sharp gasp erupted, followed by an immediate uproar. Reporters scrambled for the door to file their bulletins. Spectators turned to each other, their whispers merging into a cacophonous buzz. Elizabeth let out a choked cry, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes wide with a horror that was entirely new. Drew shot to his feet, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated fury, his body straining as if he wanted to leap over the bar and confront Jason then and there. Order! "Order in the court," the judge boomed, banging his gavel with enough force to splinter the wood. The bailiffs moved to restore calm, their presence a sudden, imposing force in the chaotic room. Through it all, Jason Morgan remained still. His expression, often an unreadable fortress, did not change into one of guilt or panic. Instead, it was a complex tapestry of shock, dawning comprehension, and a deep, profound resignation. He did not look at the angry Drew or the horrified Elizabeth. His steely blue eyes were fixed on the small boy in the witness stand, the boy who had just, with 3 simple words, irrevocably altered the course of all their lives. In the eye of this hurricane, Scout began to cry, the weight of his revelation and the subsequent chaos finally overwhelming his young spirit. The prosecutor, having achieved her goal, stood back, a look of grim satisfaction on her face. She had her bombshell. She had her star witness. But as she looked at the shattered family, the stoic alleged shooter, and the weeping child, she couldn't shake the chilling feeling that in securing her case, she might have unleashed a different kind of tragedy altogether. The immediate aftermath of Scout's testimony was a study in controlled pandemonium. The judge, his face a thundercloud, called for a recess, his gavel strikes echoing like gunshots in the suddenly riotous room. As the jury was hurriedly ushered out, their faces a mixture of astonishment and curiosity, the gallery erupted into a frenzy of speculative chatter. Drew Kane was not a man easily given to public displays of rage, but the accusation leveled by his son shattered every ounce of his self-control. "Morgan," he roared, his voice cutting through the din. He lunged forward, only to be physically restrained by his own attorney and a vigilant bailiff. "You son of a bitch! You came after me, and you let my son see it?" Jason Morgan, in contrast, remained a statue. He rose slowly from his seat, his movements deliberate, as if he were moving through water. He offered no defense, no denial, no angry retort. His gaze was still locked on the witness stand, where a court officer was now trying to comfort a sobbing Scout. The look in Jason's eyes was not one of a guilty man cornered, but of a man witnessing a terrible, unforeseen accident unfold, one he was powerless to stop. Elizabeth Weber was a ghost of herself. She seemed to float rather than walk as she rushed to the stand, pushing past the officer to gather her son into her arms. "It's okay, baby, it's okay, Mommy's here," she whispered, her voice cracking, the words a stark contrast to the storm of betrayal and fear raging in her own heart. She clutched Scout to her, her body shielding him from the chaos, but her eyes met Jason's across the crowded room. In that single, searing glance was a universe of pain, a shattered trust, a broken history, and a terrifying question: how could you? The media, of course, was having a field day. The corridor outside the courtroom was a jungle of microphones, cameras, and shouted questions. Scout Kane identifies Jason Morgan as shooter. Mob enforcer targets Courtroom heir. A child's accusation shakes Port Charles. The headlines were already being written, the story catapulting from a standard attempted murder case to a sensational, city-shaking scandal. For Jason, the journey out of the courthouse was a gauntlet. His lawyer, a sharp woman who specialized in navigating the gray areas of Port Charles law, spoke in low, urgent tones to him, but Jason barely heard her. His mind was reeling, piecing together the timeline, the logistics, the sheer impossibility of Scout's claim. He was many things, a man who lied about something like this was not one of them. If he had shot Drew Kane, he would own it. He wouldn't hide behind the terrified eyes of a child. But Scout was not lying. The boy's conviction was absolute. Which meant something else, something far more sinister, was at play. Back at the Metro Court Hotel, in a secluded suite, the fallout was just beginning. Carly Corinthos, a woman whose life was inextricably linked with Jason's, was pacing the floor like a caged tiger. "It's a setup," she declared, her voice vibrating with fury. "It has to be. There's no way Jason would do this. And to be seen by a child? Please. He's a professional." Sonny Corinthos, standing by the window and staring down at the city, turned slowly. His expression was dark, contemplative. The kid pointed right at him. "Carly. In open court. That's not just a setup, that's a masterpiece. Someone went to a lot of trouble. But who? And why?" Carly demanded, throwing her hands up in frustration. Who hates Jason enough, or Drew enough, to orchestrate this? And how do you make a child believe he saw something he didn't? That's the question, isn't it? Sunny's voice was a low rumble. You don't bribe a kid to say that. You make him believe it. Which means someone is playing a very, very deep game. The implications were staggering. If Scout's testimony was believed, Jason was looking at a lengthy prison sentence. His already complicated standing with the Port Charles Police Department would become an open and shut case. But beyond the legal consequences, the social and personal ramifications were a tidal wave. The trust between him and Drew, always tenuous, was now annihilated. His relationship with Elizabeth, which had survived countless trials, was likely a casualty of this single, devastating accusation. And Scout himself, an innocent child, was now a pawn, his young mind and memory manipulated in a way that was both cruel and psychologically damaging. At General Hospital, the news spread through the halls with viral speed. Nurses at the station huddled around a small television, their hands over their mouths. Doctors paused their rounds to discuss the shocking turn of events. For the staff who knew Elizabeth, who had seen her struggle and triumph, the news was met with a particular kind of sorrow. They had watched her rebuild her life, find happiness with Drew, and create a stable, loving home for her boys. Now, in an instant, that stability had been vaporized. Bobby Spencer, hearing the news in her office, felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. It wasn't just about the shooting, it was about the child. That poor baby, she murmured to herself, thinking of Scout's trauma and the impossible position he had been placed in.